Hello, welcome to CHRISTIFIDELES, the program dealing with the faithful people of Christ. In support of the Catholic Church's new evangelization, the Catholic Apologetics Institute of North America, CAINA, provides informative and interesting presentations and writings to help Catholics better understand and uphold our faith, heritage, into an increasingly secular society in need of hope and the Christian vision. Today we have with us Steven Hemler, the president of CAINA and the author of the Reality of God book, The Layman's Guide to the Scientific Evidence for the Creator. Steve, it's good to have you with us.
Glad to be here, Father. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I often wonder, how does someone get involved in Christian and Catholic apologetics out of all the things that you do? And I read a little bit about your history of that, and I'm thinking, how did this guy get involved in all this stuff?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, it's an interesting story. God has His own plans and His own purposes, and we just have to sort of follow where we're being led, step through the doors that He opens up. And one of the doors that He opened for us, I was employed as an engineer for 33 years, civil structural engineering with degrees, bachelor's and master's from Virginia Tech. And He led us to overseas, to the Middle East. And while we were there, we lived in a community of expatriates, and most of the other engineers that I worked with were expatriates. And we had Mass, we had CCD, we had confirmation. And our students would go off to boarding school. The company would pay for them to go to boarding school anywhere in the world they wanted to go in the 10th grade. Well, the pastor, the priest, and other adults involved with the religious education program there decided that we needed to try to help equip these young people for challenges to their faith and challenges to their morals that they would face when they go off to school at such a young age without their parents around. I had, for our family, I'm married and we have three children, and we had about 50 of these VHS videotapes of our kids and a whole bunch of the little mini DV, and I figured out how to capture those to the computer and edit them and burn them to DVD. Well, when we were preparing this Faith Challenges and Moral Challenges program for the 9th graders in our schools there, I said, well, I bet they would like to have some video in these presentations, these PowerPoint presentations. And so since I knew how to do all this video, I started putting these little video clips in. And I did learn that young people, you can't talk at them for more than 30 or 40 minutes, so we kept the thing short, but the video tended to keep their interest. And it was very well received. And another thing, so many of the people that I worked with, the engineers, were former Catholics, and they were all, except for one, they were all atheists at this point. And I would have discussions with them, and you know, seeing the surveys and things, it just became apparent that there's a need to help young people and their parents and their grandparents better understand why we believe what we believe. And that's what apologetics is. Apologetics is being able to share with others who have doubts or questions why it is that we believe, and explain that in a clear and compelling way for others. So I had long felt called to serve God full time. I had, my wife and I had been teaching religious education for over 20 years, high school and middle school age, and but it never felt like it was enough. I always felt like I should be doing more. And as soon as I could, at age 55, I took early retirement, walked away from a great job, great lifestyle, wonderful people, and a great place to live over there, and came back to Virginia, our home state, and where our children have settled, and my parents and family is from, and started what is the Catholic Apologetics Institute of North America, CAINA, to take these presentations that we developed to a wider audience, a much larger audience, to help equip people to be able to better explain and share why we believe what we believe.
Do you believe that in our society and in our world nowadays, I know you gave a talk just recently about the existence of God. Do you believe that there's a lot of people that are just atheists, and science is the way to go, and this is what we hear about? I mean, I always, always get a big kick out of even the programs, the Big Bang Theory. I mean, it's like nobody has any faith there at all whatsoever, and they're all relying on science, and of course they're socially retarded in many ways. But the fact is that they is that prevalent in our society, do you think?
Of course, as you well know, even better than I as a pastor, so many young people especially are falling away from the faith, especially when they go off to college. Surveys show that only 20% of young people go to Mass on a regular basis. The vast majority of young people who do leave the faith remain somewhat Christian notionally, 2/3 of them, but 1/3 of the people who leave the faith do adopt atheism or agnosticism. And so it's in large part due to these challenges to their faith that they experience when they go off to college, especially if they're not equipped to be able to explain to others why we believe God exists, for example.
Sure.
Or what about the question of evolution? So many times evolution is taught in a way that tends to rule God out, and it just happened, and there's no need for a God. And so which is true, creation, evolution, or both? Well, this is one of our presentations as well. And so I go around, I do these presentations for parishes, adults, and youth groups, college campus ministries, conferences, organizations like that, Knights of Columbus, and things like that.
What amazed me, you had brought up on your talk just recently when talking about the existence of God, and the amount of professors that are teaching our young people who are atheists and have no religion whatsoever. And no wonder they're getting this atheistic and agnostic attitude, because they're forcing that down the kids' throats in so many ways.
And their peers, many of their peers. It's really normal, and it's actually, I think, somewhat healthy to question your faith, to go through what's been called the searching faith stage. I think that's very important. If we never question our faith and never come to our own answers for why we believe what we believe, then we're basically, believing what our parents taught us, and it's not really our own faith. It's our parents' faith. And so in order to come to your own faith, a committed faith, to be more than a cultural Christian, but to be a committed Catholic, it's important to ask these questions and find answers. There's these internal struggles. In addition to the external challenges, there's internal challenges to faith that young people face. And so many people go off to college, they start having discussions with their peers and with their professors, and then they may not be fully aware of why they believe what they believe. For example, why they believe God exists, other than that's how they were raised. And so, what are some good reasons for believing in God? And that's what we do with the presentations and also with the book, The Reality of God.
Well, the good thing as well, too, is that the conflict is a good experience for anybody, too, because if they have to stand there and defend their faith, that means something. That brings in a richer understanding. And so, I mean, not the fact that we want to veer away from that conflict of defending the faith, but we want to have the tools, and that's what apologetics is.
We want to be equipped, yes, that's exactly right. And it's important, like I say, that our young people experience that. And so many people have been buying my book as a gift for their children and their grandchildren. I was on EWTN recently, and I told Father Mitch and the people there that after one of my talks, a lady bought 6 copies, one for her husband and one for each of her 5 children. And then after that show, I came back and another person was buying wanted 7 copies. So this is a good way. These presentations with the PowerPoint and the video, they're good, but it's only a limited audience that can experience those outside of the mass media. But the book can reach a much wider audience, and it goes through the science, what I call the rest of the story, if you remember Paul Harvey. It's the rest of the story that we don't hear in school or in college or on TV, on how science actually supports belief in God. And there's some pretty compelling scientific evidence of God's existence, as well as human evidence. Within human nature, there's evidence of God's existence. And this question of evolution and creation, the Catholic Church has a very solid answer on that as well.
Yeah, could you give us a little bit of detail on that? What you gave three aspects: cosmos,
the 3 C's. Within the book, you'll see that there's what I call the 3 C's as evidence of God's existence. The first C is the cosmos, what science discovered about the physical world. And this is discussed, of course, in more detail in the presentations and in the book. But we look at the Big Bang, and from nothing comes nothing. And so if there is something, there has to be a cause for that. And something beyond space, beyond time, would have brought the universe into being. So that points to God. And a really compelling one is the laws of nature. This is what did it for me when I was in high school. Laws like E equals mc squared, F equals ma. There's a lot of these mathematical expressions of the laws of nature, these laws of nature that govern our universe and control and make it orderly and provide the harmony that we see in the universe. And for example, E equals mc squared. We all know that formula. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Albert Einstein is the one that developed that formula to express this law of nature. But the question then, of course, is, well, did he create that law of nature, or did he merely figure out a mathematical expression for it? And the answer is obvious, that he merely figured out a mathematical expression for it. It existed before he figured out this mathematical expression. So the questions come up, well, if it existed before, where did it come from? And then also, why is it intelligible? Why can we humans figure it out? Why was he able to figure out and express it mathematically? Why is there this mathematical foundation to the universe? And then the third thing within the cosmos, the first C, is the fine-tuning of the universe. There are about 20 of constants, numbers in the laws, the mathematical expression of the laws of nature. They're all set to precisely what they need to be for us to be here. And if any one of them was just a little bit different, we wouldn't be here, and the universe wouldn't be here either. And so it's an amazing thing.
I love the example that you gave with the grain of sand, the grain of sand of all over the world, and if one of those mathematical equations was off just one of that,
right,
we wouldn't. None of these things would be existing.
right.
And you look at it, whoa, wait a minute, the unbelievable amount.
Yeah,
We're gonna stop right now and take a little break. Please stay tuned to watch more of Steve Hemler, and we will be returning back in just a few moments. Welcome back to CHRISTIFIDELES. We are talking to Steven Hemler, the president of the Catholic Apologetics Institute of North America, CAINA. And he is the author of The Reality of God, the layman's guide to scientific evidence for the Creator. Now, Steve, you were talking to us earlier about one of the three C's for the existence of God. We learned one of them is the cosmos, right, and which is certainly talking about certainly the lessons and the Big Bang and the laws of nature and the coordination of all of these things. And when you put all that together, it's quite a remarkable thing. And you think, well, gee, yeah, we've taken all these things. But there's two other aspects too, right?
Yes, so that's the scientific evidence of God's existence, the rest of the story. The first C is the cosmos, like you said, the laws of nature, the Big Bang, the laws of nature, and the fine-tuning of those laws. And then within human nature, there's evidence of God's existence. This is within our consciousness as human beings and our conscience. So those are the last two of the three C's. And what's interesting about our consciousness as human beings, we have these desires that ultimately cannot be satisfied here in this world, and that are pointing to God as the source of these desires and where we would find their ultimate satisfaction. For example, we want perfect love. We are oftentimes frustrated in our relationships because people don't love us perfectly, and we desire perfect love, but we've never had perfect love. We never will, and so where do we?
Can I stop you there? Isn't that where we go off? Isn't that where atheists and agnostics find, constantly searching for for better and more important things and that sort of stuff. Isn't that where we go awry in so many ways? Isn't
Yes,
it?
definitely. We're looking for love in all the wrong places.
That's exactly.
And,
I was going to say that, but I wasn't certain.
And so we need to realize that the fulfillment of this perfect love, as Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in God, is God. God is this perfect love. And He's also perfect joy and perfect justice and perfect beauty and perfect knowledge, perfect truth. And that's an interesting one as well. We actually have 5 of these desires. They're called transcendental desires that point to something beyond this world. They cannot be fulfilled in this world. Knowledge is one. We seek perfect truth. We seek perfect knowledge. Science is all about learning more and more. And no matter how much scientists have discovered, they are aware somehow that there's more to learn, that we don't know it all. And the question is, well, why are we aware there's more to learn? Why aren't we satisfied with, what we know? And also similar with love, why aren't we satisfied with an imperfect manifestation of love? Why do we desire this perfection? Well, could you imagine scientists saying, someday that we're just going to quit doing science? We know everything about everything. Scientists know that they don't know everything about everything, and they're never going to know it. And so they're always striving to learn, as much as they can. So again, God is the perfect truth, the perfect love, the perfect beauty, the perfect joy, and the perfect justice, and that's who we're seeking. So that's within our consciousness as human beings, the second C. And then the third C is our conscience. We all know that we feel that some things are right and some things are wrong, and we're supposed to do right and we're supposed to do wrong. But we're not supposed to do wrong. We're supposed to do right and not do wrong. But we have the freedom to do wrong. We can choose to not listen to our conscience. And why is this? Why? And again, it's God is trying to get us to be voluntarily as He is, which is perfectly just, perfectly good, perfectly moral. And so our conscience has been called the voice of God in our soul, and it points to a God who is as He's trying to get us to be. But He still respects our freedom. He provides enough evidence, for example, these 3 C's, to convince anyone willing to believe but not compel the unwilling. That's because true love can't be forced. God can't force us to love Him. It wouldn't be true love. It has to be given voluntarily. So our challenge, our goal as Christians is to choose voluntarily to know, love, and serve God. And that brings about the purpose of life as well.
Do you ever get people saying, well, I know people that have no conscience at all. Some of them, I think I've come across a few of them in my time. But do you ever get people say, well, we've learned this conscience?
That is, some people tend to say that, but Dr. Kraft and others have a good response to that. Is no matter where you go, certain things are held to be right and certain things are held to be wrong. All, for example, lying and cheating and stealing and betraying, those are never held throughout the beginning of time, are never held to be virtues. Mm-hmm. The beginning of human culture and every society has always held those things to be vices and that they are wrong. And that charity and caring for neighbor and telling the truth and being honest and considerate of others, those are never held to be vices. Those are always held to be virtues. So the conscience, of course, has to be formed. Our conscience can be misled. We may end up thinking some things are right that aren't actually right, and so that's where we have to look to the Bible and the teachings of the church to have a formed conscience, a properly formed conscience. But the reality is, and I think very few people would disagree, that we have within us this innate awareness that some things are right and some things are wrong, and that we are supposed to do right and avoid wrong. And when we do something wrong, we feel bad, we feel guilty, something we know is wrong. We feel bad about that. And so that would be our conscience. And again, it's God trying to get us to behave in this way. You
had mentioned something in your talk earlier that regarding where people see that horrible things happen in the world, and they say, well, how could a God respond to this? I hear that a lot of times, especially from people who have experienced like World War II and in Europe, and how the atrocities and the horrible things that occurred there. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's one of our 6 presentations. It's a whole different, can't do it in 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But there's 2 types of evil, moral evil and natural evil. And moral evil can be explained, like the World War II situation, by our free will. We have a conscience, but we don't have to follow it. And so, it leads, when people don't follow their conscience, it leads to moral evil and its manifestation in the world. Natural evil, things like disease and earthquakes and tsunamis and hurricanes, those are a little bit difficult to explain. And I think C.S. Lewis captured it well when he said that this pain and suffering is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. If everything was always perfect, we'd probably never turn to God. And we, as Augustine said, our ultimate hope and joy and salvation lie with God. And so God has to help us turn to Him. And in a way, it's like in a vaccination. When you're giving an infant a shot, they don't understand that pain, but we know that that's good for them. Yeah. And so when suffering comes our way, our challenge as Christians is to accept that suffering as, as an opportunity to grow closer to God and to become a better person, to become more compassionate, more understanding, more patient, and helping others deal with their suffering as well as dealing with our own. So that is one of the 6 presentations that we do on CAINA. The first one is the scientific and human evidence of God's existence. The second one is which is true, evolution, creation, or both. The third one then gets into Jesus. How do we know Jesus is the Son of God, and and He really rose from the dead?
That's a good one too, because you hear a lot of that from the educational channels on TV, trying to disprove it. Yeah.
And then the fourth one is how are we saved? As Catholics, we're often asked this question. We don't really quite know how to answer it. And as part of that, we look at why was Christ's passion necessary for our salvation? This was a very horrific thing that He went through, and why would a loving Father want His Son to go through that? So we look at God's love, but as also His justice, and how God's love was willing to satisfy the needs of His justice. And then the fifth one is the one we're doing here tonight on why go to church. So many people think it's okay today to be spiritual but not religious. That 2/3 of the people that don't go to church believe in God and consider themselves to be Christian, but yet they're not at church. So, they think they can go off in the woods and, just be with God that way. And so this talk looks at how to, why Christ willed His church and the sacraments for our own benefit to bring us closer to Him and to help us in our journey of faith. And then the last one is why would a loving God allow evil, pain, and suffering?
Now, the CAINA Institute, is you going to obtain these online, these lessons or these programs, or how is that? How go about that?
As much as we can. We use these video clips in our presentations, and some of those, there are copyright issues with putting them online. But there are many. If you go to our website, cainaweb.org, that's CAINAWEB.org. One word, cainaweb.org. If you go there, you'll see articles and links to a lot of the videos that we use are on YouTube, like the Big Bang and the fine tuning and all that. So we put the links there so that people can see that information that we do cover in our presentations. Some of the presentations are online. The one on evolution and creation, that one is, the full presentation is online, 2 15-minute versions. And then of course there's a lot of articles. All of these presentations are summarized and give a handout at the end of the content of the presentation, and those summaries are all online on our website as well. And then there's many other references and resources, other websites there that people can go to get more information.
And if people wanted you to come to their parish or a place to talk, that information is online as well.
Yes, how to contact us. So like I said, we're based in Virginia, do a lot of talks in the Mid-Atlantic area and the East Coast, and so I'd be happy to come.
And you can get your book through St. Benedict Press or Tan Publishers,
Tan books, yeah.
or local bookstores. A lot of Catholic bookstores do hold it.
Amazon,
and it's on
Barnes and
Amazon
Noble.
too. Great.
Yes.
I had to ask you. You said you gave up a lot of your job and that, and you said, has this been a worthwhile response for you, and changing your whole life around and being a part of the Catholic Christian Apologetics? Has it been meaningful, or?
Absolutely, Father. It really has. And what has been most touching is the support of my family in this endeavor. I mean, to walk away from a terrific job and the only place that our kids knew as home, and just to leave that was very hard. But the ability to go out and help people be able to defend and explain why we believe what we believe in our culture is extremely rewarding. And this, I just feel called by God to do this, and it's just important, I think, as you well know, to follow our calling.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it very much. This has been CHRISTIFIDELES, the program about the faithful people of Christ. And we hope you continue to join us. And meanwhile, remember that we are the face of Christ to others. So let's try to live that way. Amen.